If you've been watching my videos, then you know that restaurants are going to see a major boost in sales post-pandemic. If you haven't seen my videos, you really should. But you're in luck because you can find them in the link listed below in the description. So we know that we're likely to see a 20 to 30% sales bump from the pre-COVID numbers. But those sales are going to be split between the off-premise business that came alive during the pandemic and the resurgence of the dine-in business. But with that increased business can come an increase in labor costs. You're either going to have to hire more people or you're going to have to manage your existing labor force more efficiently. Sometimes you're even going to need to do both. In this video, I'm going to show you why the design of your restaurant really matters in how you manage labor. I'm also going to show you how effectively managing labor and designing the restaurant to manage labor will help save you money while delivering the best results possible. All right, so we're talking about managing labor. And really, when you talk about managing labor, there's two ways to look at it. The first is to manage labor up, and the second is to manage labor down. What am I talking about? Up, down, sideways? What does that mean? Well, basically, you have 2 or 3 different periods during the normal course of restaurant business. You have peak. Typically, we refer to that as peak hour, maybe peak 2 hours. And then you have off peak. And then you have things like mid peak. When you have peak, mid peak, and off peak, you have to manage labor differently. So when we're talking about peak, we're talking about the busiest time of the day for your restaurant. And in that case, what you're doing to manage labor is a lot of what we talked about in our last episode, where we're talking about ergonomics and we're talking about efficiencies. And that's efficiencies and ergonomics of each labor center. As business starts to wane during the day, as sales start to slow down, as number of transactions start to slow down, you then have to manage labor down. You have to be able to either change shifts or let hourly workers go at certain times during the day, or you're going to have a whole lot of labor without a whole lot of business. At peak, that's not a problem. At peak, hopefully you've got so much business. The whole point to it is being able to manage efficiently and produce and deliver the food efficiently. So managing labor during peak hours is not typically an issue because you've got enough sales to offset the labor cost. The trick is managing that labor during off-peak times. As sales diminish, you don't want to lose money by having too much labor on staff. So that's really what we're going to talk about today, is this idea of managing labor during off-peak. And what that's about is essentially 2 things. It's reducing staff and combining labor centers. And what do I mean by a labor center? So let's look at this. This is our made-up typical casual dining restaurant. And here we have the kitchen. Typically in the kitchen, you would have at least 1 expediter. That's my funny symbol for a person. And then you might have 2 or 3 line cooks. And then since we're at peak, you probably have a dishwasher. So right now, that's 5 people at peak. Now, off peak, what we try to do is we try to kind of combine these. So in this case, you may end up with only 2 people running your cook line, and you may have 1 expediter. And since it's not busy, 1 of those cooks can help handle dishwash. Now, instead of 5, we've brought it down to 4. And what we've done that by minimizing the number of people at each station, and we've done it by combining what were originally 2, in this case, 3 different labor centers. Now, what happens when we go to that same restaurant, but instead of it being pre-COVID, we're now dealing with the main difference between what we see happening in full service restaurants pre-COVID to what we see happening now. And that's we're adding to-go business. At least, 20 to 35% of sales coming from off-premise or to-go business. So again, we're going to use the same great example of Dingleberries. And now we're going to look at it during peak. So for peak, now we have 1 is our host. Now the big difference, 2 is our to-go or off-premise station. 3 is bar. 4 is cook. 5 is expo. 6 is dish. And then 7 is dining. Now, again, we've added a labor center here to handle the to-go business. This is a great idea, except for the fact of one big problem. Right now, in order to get the food from the kitchen to the to-go area where people are coming in and picking it up, or third-party delivery people are coming, you actually have to add labor because these are so far apart. So instead of reducing labor, we're adding labor. So this is an example that we see over and over again. A lot of people come to us and say, hey, this is what we're doing. We're going to add to go either next to the hostess or the host station, or, sometimes we're going to go nuts and we're going to add it to the bar. And the only problem with that, again, is the distance between where the food is coming out and where it's being picked up. And all of that is adding labor. And this gets even worse when we look at this during off-peak. Now, why is this worse? Well, now what we can do here is we can combine our host and our to-go station. We still have to have someone else at the bar. We do our very best to combine these stations. And then we've got our dining area. So 3 is our combined cook, dish, expo. But really, that doesn't work because remember, you've got to run all this food out from here to the to-go area. So in this case, we're going to have to add a 4th in here. We're going to have that expediter station. So this won't work. We add back the expo and then we have dining. Now we've managed from 6 down to 5, but we still have that added problem of all the labor required to get the food from the kitchen to the to-go area. Again, this is why when we look at both the conventional pre-COVID full service restaurant and we look at the post-COVID option for Dingleberries, you see why Dingleberries is not a good thing. It actually doesn't allow us to manage labor as well as it could be. And the reason is because of the location of that to-go station or off-premise station to the dining area. In our example of Restaurants Redefined, we've got a lot of opportunities here because now we've completely rearranged the dining area. We've changed adjacencies of the different labor centers. Now, when we look at this during peak, we've got the host, which is here. We've got the bar, which is here. So 1 is host, 2 is bar, 3 is your cook line, 4 is expo, 5 is dish, and 6 is dining. And then the key to go right here is 7. So at peak hours in our new Restaurants Redefined, we've got 7 labor centers. And the key here is that the kitchen, expo, and to-go area are right next to one another. And we'll look at that even closer when we look at this during off-peak. So when we look at this during off-peak, now have the opportunity of combining 1 and 2. So we've got host and bar that we're going to combine into one labor center. So now our bartender comes out and acts as our host when necessary during off-peak. Our second labor station is now a combination of cook and dish. Our third labor station is a combination of to-go and expo. And of course, our fourth labor station is dining. So off-peak, we have a total of 4 labor stations. And again, like I was saying, we have the ability to really make that work, because now the expediter and the to-go person, they're 4.5 feet apart. All of that can work very, very well. Same thing with the host and bar. The other advantage to this is that the expediter and the to-go station really have essentially the same primary job responsibility. Their job responsibility is order accuracy and timing. The other advantage here is that a bartender and a host, they again have the same job responsibility. Their job responsibility is hospitality. So now we're combining like for like. And if you look at this 3-dimensionally, again, like we talked about, we now combine bar and host. You see how easy it is for those 2 people to act, as one. And then we've got over here, all the way in the back, we've got to go and we've got expo. The other advantage here is this clearly, very, very clearly creates a line that on this side of the line is all about the dine-in experience. And on this side of the line, it's all about the to-go experience. So from a customer standpoint, you're also clearly zoning the restaurant for the 2 different activities that are important to the customer. That's why moving towards this model is so powerful. And then you can see in the back of house, 3-dimensionally again, we've got our cook line, we've got our to-go station, and then we've got our expediter station here. You see how easy it is to combine these 2 areas, because look at how close it is. They're essentially just taking 1 or 2 steps instead of walking all the way across the restaurant. This really is the key reason why in Restaurants Redefined, we've got a much better scenario to manage labor. And that's all about the key adjacencies of each of these labor centers. And that's it. Remember, you don't want to be like dingleberries. You want to make sure your restaurant design is optimized for this new future workflow. And if it is, you're going to see improved efficiency, a less stressed staff, decreased labor costs, and God willing, more profits. To learn more about Restaurants Redefined and other topics about restaurant design, follow us on LinkedIn, Facebook, and stardesignteam.com. You can also find our other videos in the links in the description below. Until next time, I've been Steve Starr, and this is my sign-off voice.